Guys, you made it to the final video of our biochemistry crash course. Well done. I am so proud of you. Now you can call yourself a nerd because you watched a biochemistry crash course. So in this final lesson, we're talking about fat and cholesterol. In this lesson, we'll talk about the basics of fat and cholesterol again. We'll talk about fat and cholesterol transport, which is the main topic of this lesson. We'll talk about good and bad cholesterol, and we'll talk about the cholesterol pirate. Wait, why should I care about fat and cholesterol biochemistry? That's a really good question, little green creature. Let me tell you why. Fat and cholesterol is probably the number one killer in this world. You see, the number one cause of death worldwide is ischemic heart disease, and this is when fat and cholesterol clog up your coronary arteries, which are found in your heart, and that gives you a heart attack. And so it is an important topic from a health perspective. All of us will at some point need to get our cholesterol levels and our fasting lipids tested for health reasons. And so if you want to understand your blood test results, understanding the biochemistry behind that is really, really helpful. So that's why we care about fat and cholesterol. So let's get straight into this, basics of fat and cholesterol chemistry. So let's start with the basic question, what is fat? We've talked about this extensively throughout our videos. This is a blob of fat, and as you'll recall, we have a glycerol backbone and 3 fatty acids attached to it, which form a triglyceride. Now we've seen this process where we can break that down into glycerol and free fatty acids, and this is called lipolysis, or another word for that is hydrolysis. So that's the process of breaking down a triglyceride into glycerol and free fatty acids. And we can put them back together in the process of re-esterification, which is also known as lipogenesis. So triglycerides is for storage and transport, and when we need to use these fatty acids for fuel, we'll convert them into glycerol and free fatty acids, and so that's to burn as fuel. So that's fat in a nutshell. Okay then, what is cholesterol? Well, cholesterol is another lipid molecule. In this course so far, we've focused mainly on fatty acids and glycerol and triglycerides. Well, park that for a second because we have a second kid on the block, and that is cholesterol. This is what cholesterol looks like, and as you might recall, every single joining point in organic chemistry is a carbon, and so it's a carbon 4-ring structure with this dangly bit down the end, and that's cholesterol. Whilst fatty acids are mainly a fuel source, cholesterol is a really important structural component. So it's used in steroid hormones, things such as cortisol, testosterone, estrogen, the sex hormones. They are all based on cholesterol. And cholesterol is really important in the cell membranes. Cholesterol helps to keep the cell membranes strong and fluid. And so that's the role of cholesterol in cell membranes. Now, there's another form of cholesterol that we can transform it into, which is tightly packed. You'll see this end chain is a bit different. And this is tightly packed for transfer. We call it cholesterol ester. And so that's just to mention there. You don't have to worry too much about that. But just know that when we transport cholesterol, we usually convert it into this form. So what's the big problem here? Well, I'll tell you what the problem is. The problem is that lipids suck at dissolving in water. You might know that oil and water does not mix. And so if you've just eaten a nice fatty meal, you can't have that fat just float through your bloodstream like a big old blob. It can't dissolve in the water, and that's a problem for transporting lipids around our body. Now, I'll also tell you what the solution is. We must package lipid up with a material that can deal with both water and fat. And so, to do this, I'm going to introduce you to one more lipid molecule. We've had triglycerides, we've had cholesterol, and now we're going to introduce the phospholipid. The phospholipid is a molecule with a hydrophilic head made of phosphate and a hydrophobic tail made of fatty acids. And so let me explain what this means. This hydrophobic phosphate head is compatible with water. It's a type of substance that can dissolve in water due to its chemical properties. The fatty acid tails are compatible with fat. These can sit happily with the lipids that we're trying to transport. The words we use for this is hydrophilic, hydro meaning water and philic meaning to love. So this loves water, it's compatible with water. whereas the fatty acid side of this molecule is hydrophobic, and so it's scared of water. And so this bit is compatible with fat, this bit is compatible with water, and we're going to use this phospholipid to build a little shell to carry our lipids. So let's get a blob of fat, we'll chuck it in with a bunch of phospholipids, and we form a series of structures like this. The fat is in the middle, interfacing with the fatty acid tails of the phospholipid, with the phosphates forming a shell on the outside. Perfect. These structures we call a micelle. If we combine, say, a blob of fat with a bunch of phospholipids, forming these micelles, we call this entire mixture an emulsion. You might have heard that word before. If you are making for example, a salad dressing, and you want to mix olive oil with balsamic vinegar, if you combine those two ingredients, you'll see they separate initially, but you give it a good beat and it'll combine into a nice smooth substance. That is essentially this. It is an emulsion. And a really good salad dressing is well emulsified. So that's our solution. We're going to combine fat with phospholipids in order to transfer them. So initially, as we absorb fat in our intestines, we'll form simple micelles to hold them. But as we get more complicated and need to transfer this lipid from our guts to the rest of our body, to our muscles and our heart and our brain, what we need to do is to transport them around a more robust container. And so this is what we call a lipoprotein. This is a robust container to transport the fat around. And we'll talk lots about lipoproteins in just 1 second. I get it. Fat and cholesterol must be packaged in order to be transported. Yes, exactly. That is the whole point of the last 2 minutes of me talking. Fat and cholesterol must be packaged. So let's talk about how fat and cholesterol is packaged. Enter part 2, fat and cholesterol transport. So let's start off with digestion. Here's our happy fed person. You have a nice fatty meal. The fat travels through your mouth, into your stomach, and arrives at the small intestine. Enzymes break the fat down into fatty acids and glycerol, right? Which is then absorbed into the intestinal cell. The fat's now digested and ready to be sent to the various parts of our body. The question now is, how do we ship this fat around the body? And that's the question of fat transport. We need a special container to package up our lipids, and so we're going to introduce the lipoprotein. The lipoprotein is this nice shipping container that lets us move fats from one part of the body to the next. At the core, we have fat and cholesterol. We have a sphere of phospholipids. And then finally, we have these studs of proteins, which are called apolipoproteins, or you might hear them being called apoproteins. Now, this is the basic structure of the lipoprotein. There are 4 main lipoproteins that we need to know about. So let me tell you about the 4 main lipoproteins. The first is called the chylomicron. The second is called the VLDL, which stands for very low density lipoprotein. The third is the LDL, which stands for low density lipoprotein. And finally, we have the HDL, which stands for the high density lipoprotein. So let's go through the story of how fat is transported in our body, and we'll go through each of these 4 main lipoproteins. Are you ready? Let's go. Lipoprotein number 1, the chylomicron. We start our journey at the gut. So we've absorbed all our fat and cholesterol, and now we need to package it up and send it to the rest of the body. And so we package it up in the chylomicron. This is a lipoprotein containing lots of fat and cholesterol, and it will travel via the lymphatics to our peripheral tissues. So for example, our muscle tissue or our adipose tissue. Now, when this chylomicron gets to those tissue cells, it docks on this little green thing. This green thing is called LPL, which stands for lipoprotein lipase. And this will take the lipoprotein and suck the fat out of it. Just the fat, just the triglycerides, and not the cholesterol. So chylomicrons will deliver fat only to the peripheral tissues. And then after it's dropped off the fat, it will leave as a different chylomicron called the chylomicron remnant. There's only cholesterol inside now. And this will travel back to the liver where it gets smashed up. And so that's the story of the chylomicron and the first step of fat transport. The gut will export chylomicrons containing both fat and cholesterol via the lymphatics, which will dock onto LPL on the peripheral tissues to deliver fat only, but not cholesterol. And then it emerges as a smaller lipoprotein called a chylomicron remnant, which has no fat but is rich in cholesterol. And then this travels back to the liver. So that's all there in writing for you. Step 2, the VLDL. So now everything's gone to the liver, and now the liver says, hey, I want to get in on this action. The gut can export lipoproteins. I want to start my own export business. And so it does exactly that. It sends out its own lipoprotein. And this time it's the VLDL, the very low density lipoprotein. Now this is very similar to a chylomicron. It's full of fat and cholesterol, but it goes via the bloodstream and it goes to the peripheral tissues. And again, it's going to dock onto LPL, lipoprotein lipase, which is the docking protein, and that's going to suck the fat out, but not the cholesterol, and it's going to emerge now as a smaller remnant, which we call the LDL, and that's cholesterol only. And we'll talk about the LDL in the next slide. But for now, this is the summary. The liver exports its own lipoprotein called the VLDL. It contains lots of fat and cholesterol, and it goes via the bloodstream. It docks onto LPL to deliver fat only, but not cholesterol. And then what happens is it leaves as a smaller remnant called the LDL, which has no fat but is rich in cholesterol. So you can imagine the analogy. VLDL is similar to the chylomicron, and LDL is similar to the chylomicron remnant. And so that's the second part of the story. The liver delivers fat to tissues via the VLDL. And that leaves us with an LDL. Now, part 3, the LDL. So here's where we got up to the other time. We've delivered the fat via VLDL and we end up with LDL. Where does that go? Now the LDL, carrying cholesterol only, will travel around and goes to any cell that needs cholesterol. And if a cell needs cholesterol, which many cells do, they need it for their cell membranes or to make hormones, they will express this LDL receptor. And this LDL receptor will say, hello, I need cholesterol. And then the LDL will come and dock on it, and then it will be engulfed. And that cholesterol is successfully delivered. And that's it. End of story. So, the LDLs, which emerge from the VLDLs after dropping off the fat, circulate towards any cells that require cholesterol. They bind to the LDL receptor and are engulfed, thereby successfully delivering cholesterol to the cell. All cholesterol is transported to tissue cells via LDL. So any cells that need cholesterol will say, I need cholesterol, it will raise its LDL receptor, and it will receive cholesterol via LDL. And so that's the story of LDL, which brings us to our fourth and final lipoprotein, the HDL. So the liver is quite smart and it knows we need to balance the amount of cholesterol in our body. And so it has its own import business. And this is what the HDL is about. So the liver will send out HDL, which acts as a cholesterol garbage truck. Now initially, the HDL are empty shells. They're empty cartons. And they'll go out and interact with cells and pick up any loose cholesterol or any cholesterol that cells do not need. And so the HDL comes by, the cell says, oh, I don't need this cholesterol, can you please take that? The HDLs fill up and they return that cholesterol back to the liver to be smashed up and reprocessed. And so that's what HDL is. It's a cholesterol garbage truck that collects loose and unwanted cholesterol and then brings it back to the liver to be smashed up. So empty HDLs picks up loose and unwanted cholesterol and it takes it back to the liver. This is called reverse cholesterol transport. So, whilst LDLs carry cholesterol from the liver to the tissues, HDLs do the opposite. They carry cholesterol from the tissues back to the liver. So LDLs is the export business from the liver and HDLs is the import business. So let's summarize all 4 lipoproteins. Firstly, we have the gut's export business, which is the chylomicron. And this delivers fat only to cells and then returns cholesterol to the liver as a chylomicron remnant. Next, we have the liver's export business, which is VLDL, which drops fat off to cells, And then it emerges as LDL, which drops cholesterol off to cells. And then finally, we have the liver's import business, which is HDLs. It first sends out empty HDLs, it collects unwanted or loose cholesterol, and then this HDL, this cholesterol garbage truck, returns to the liver and delivers that cholesterol back to be crushed up. Wow, what an intricate shipping system. And I think that's the only appropriate response to this. And so hopefully you have an idea of how the different types of lipoproteins work. Let's talk about good versus bad cholesterol. So this is cholesterol. I've drawn it as a scribble of orange ink using my tablet. Now, cholesterol is a molecule that you can get through your diet. You can eat things that contain cholesterol, things such as meats and eggs, things like that. But actually, most cholesterol in your body is produced by your own cells. Cholesterol is a very important substance. Like I said, it makes up hormones, it makes up cell membranes. But what makes it good or bad? You might have heard the term good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. Well, let's explain that a little bit. LDLs, we talked about, take cholesterol towards your body tissues, right? From the liver to the body. Now, this includes a tissue called your blood vessels. And LDLs can clog up in the wall of the blood vessels, and that's what leads to heart attack. And so LDLs actually contribute to a cardiovascular risk. Now, the opposite is true of HDLs. HDL takes cholesterol away from your body tissues. And so we call LDLs bad cholesterol, and we call HDLs good cholesterol. You see, important for health is not just the total amount of cholesterol, it's the way that it is being transported. That is, whether the cholesterol is going towards the body tissues or whether it's going away from the body tissues. LDLs is towards your body tissues, which leads to a buildup of cholesterol plaques, and that's bad for your health, whilst HDLs take cholesterol away from body tissues back to the liver, and so that's lessening the plaques. And so, LDL, bad cholesterol, HDL is good cholesterol. And when you get a blood test for your fasting cholesterol levels, you'll get a readout of total cholesterol, but it will also break down your LDL levels and HDL levels. And what we want to aim for are low LDLs and high HDLs. So there we have it, good versus bad cholesterol. The last thing I want to talk about is a strange anomaly called the cholesterol pirate. There is a way that good cholesterol can become bad cholesterol. Wait, you're saying that HDL can become LDL? Yes, I am, little green creature. I'll tell you how that happens. To do that, I need to introduce the pirate. Our body has an enzyme called cholesterol ester transfer protein, or CETP, and this is CETP. It's a big old pirate. And what CETP does is that it hijacks the HDL and allows it to interact with the other lipoproteins. It takes out the cholesterol in HDL and it swaps it with the fats in the other lipoproteins. So, for example, here's HDL, here are the other lipoproteins. CETP comes along and it will take the cholesterol from the HDL and put it into the other lipoproteins, and it'll take some of the fat from the other lipoproteins and put it into HDL. It's a good old switcheroo. Now, the analogy is you imagine the garbage truck is going out, and then a pirate comes up, stops the garbage truck, takes some of the garbage and puts it in the fresh fruit delivery van. And then he'll take some of that fresh fruit and put it into the HDL. And that's a bit absurd, isn't it? This results in less of the cleaning effects of HDL and more of the disease-causing effects of LDL. You can get high CETP pirate levels, whether due to genetics or due to high triglyceride levels, that will cause your CETP activity to increase. And that is associated with a higher cardiovascular risk. And so right now there is research into whether we can have a medication that targets CETP so that you get more good cholesterol and less bad cholesterol. Sounds like a real nuisance. That's exactly right. Well, we're at the end. Let's summarize. Here is the summary slides. Lipoproteins transport our fat and cholesterol. There are 4 different types of lipoproteins. LDL is bad, HDL is good, and we've got this weird CETP piracy business. And that's it. We've gotten to the end of the biochemistry course. It has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for watching this course. This is the first course that I've uploaded onto YouTube. I've taught students for years, but this is the first time actually posting something online. Now, this course actually belongs to a larger course that I'm making, which includes a whole variety of modules on all sorts of topics, including cell biology, molecular biology, genetics, immunology, histology, anatomy, pharmacology, microbiology. Anything else? I'm not sure. But right now, I'm putting together an online course that contains many modules that cover all these different topics in the same way that I have done with this biochemistry crash course. And it'll cover all the main topics that you would learn in any science or biomedical science degree. And I hope it can be helpful to health students, science students, medical students, nursing students, any sort of profession that might need to have a bit of basic science knowledge, especially in the biology and biomedical science field. So, if you're interested in this course, leave a comment or get in touch, and hopefully, you'll be seeing more of this stuff soon. So, once again, thanks so much for watching this biochemistry crash course. My name is Otto, and I'll see you soon.